Thank you for joining us. The event will get underway in just a moment. We appreciate your patience. Thank you for joining us. The event will get underway in just a moment. We appreciate your patience. Good evening, everyone. My name is John, and I'm the event coordinator at McNally Robinson Booksellers. I'm broadcasting tonight from Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples. And beneath my feet is the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. Before we begin, I'd just like to say hello to everybody here in Zoom, everybody who is watching on YouTube, both now and in the future. Thank you all for joining us here this evening. One thing I should point out is that closed captioning is enabled for this event, and I'll put a little note on that in the chat. That is naturally the imperfect captioning that Zoom provides, so I do apologize for that, but hopefully that is of assistance if you are in Zoom and hoping to take advantage of that. I'd like to thank Penguin Random House of Canada and Knopf Books for Young Readers, and also our colleagues in McNally Robinson, Saskatoon, for all their help in spreading the word about this event and making it happen. We are completely thrilled to be here tonight to celebrate the Montague Twins Volume 2 of The Devil's Music by Nathan Page and Drew Shannon. Both Nathan and Drew are with us here this evening to discuss the series with your host for the evening, Josef Estabrooks. That'll be getting underway right away. Before that happens, I should point out just a few quick notes about tonight. If you are here in Zoom and have any questions for any of the participants, we encourage you to write them in the Q&A box, which you will find just at the bottom of your screen. Rest assured you will not interrupt the conversation, and that'll make it easy to find the questions. If you'd like to offer any comments or greetings in the chat, please feel free to do so as well. And for all you watching on YouTube, this video will remain available for viewing thereafter, so please do feel free to share it with anyone who is unable to attend this evening. The Montague Twin series is a series of books that we're just completely thrilled by here in Winnipeg. The province, the city loves these books as well. And I will point out, even though I work on the adult side of things, every time there's a particularly fascinating or intriguing new young adult graphic novel title or a children's title, then they're immediately placed in my hand and I'm told to check them out right away. And that's exactly what happened with the Montague Twins. They're an incredibly captivating series, and I will be inviting somebody who is much more of an expert in these matters up in just a moment to say a few words. That expert is my longtime colleague and a longtime bookseller at McNally Robinson Booksellers, Josef Estabrooks. He is the manager of McNally Robinson for Kids here in Winnipeg. His love of graphic novels goes back to wading through piles of Flash comics as a 9-year-old, and he has greatly enjoyed the expanding influence of graphic novels in children's and young adult publishing. So please join me in virtually welcoming Josef Estabrooks.
Hello all. I know that you're not here to see me, but I did want to say that I'm very pleased to be here and to have an opportunity provided by Penguin Random House to have a conversation with Nathan Page and Drew Shannon. As John said, I am a huge fan of the series. And so I'm going to invite Nathan and Drew in, ask them some of my questions, and get a little conversation going. And you are once again very welcome to add your own questions into the Q&A, and I will pick them up as space is available in the conversation. So Nathan, Drew, hop on in. And welcome to virtual Winnipeg.
Hello? Hello?
Ooh, chilly.
Yeah.
It even comes through on the screen. So I guess I should probably start off, and I think this is a fair statement, is that we are talking about Volume 2, The Devil's Music, And if anyone was hoping to avoid spoilers for the original volume, they're pretty much doomed. That's we're on the same page there.
I guess
I think that's
so. I didn't even
fair.
think of that. That makes sense though. Yeah. Sorry, folks. Go read the
You
first one
had your
right now.
chance.
Go right now.
Well, my first experience with the Witch's Hand with the original volume, our buyer Kai had selected it, thrown it into my hands, and I found myself with no introduction, fascinated by what appeared to be a bit of a classic set, mid-century teen mystery, go-getter, Hardy Boys style. And when I realized that the magic that was supposedly going on was actually going on, it just it threw me for a very, very enjoyable loop. I guess my first question for whoever wants to answer it is, what came first, I suppose? Did you want to write about teen mystery solvers, or did you want to write about teen witches?
I think
Please, buddy.
teen mystery. I had this idea for like a very Hardy Boys-esque kind of thing. I thought that would be like a really fun space to play in for a comic, but I didn't know exactly what that would be. I just felt like there's a lot you could do with that potentially, and so I would just sort of draw fun characters, and then I came up with these characters that I drew. I called them the Montague Twins, based off of a street that I grew up on, and then I was like, well, now I have at least a couple of weird looking characters. I don't know how to write very well, and I don't know what to do with this. I just thought that like it could be a fun thing to do. So I asked Nathan if he would help me just like develop whatever this could be, whatever this space is, and then it just like really snowballed into I think something that came up early on was like, what if like an episode of Scooby-Doo was like, and then there was like no mask to pull off, like it was just the magic was real, all that stuff was actually kind of happening. And I think that was sort of a does that make sense, Nathan? Like I remember us talking about that kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. The Scooby-Doo example for sure. Like, and then real magic, because every time it's just the crooked real estate mogul in town that's doing something, and we're like, no, it's real magic. But I'm glad you remembered that, because as far back as I can recall, we were always like, but what about the magic?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess to answer your question, it was not immediate, but pretty quick off the bat. We were like, okay, let's bring this element in, just because it's something that we both love so much.
Well, it's interesting because not that I don't believe you, but the magic it's a system. We watch them go to class, and then in the second volume, with respect to spoilers, we learn that there are in fact a lot of rules to how magic and magic users function. So it really felt like, I guess I assumed it must have been a pretty early element, because you seem to know more about it than the readers get to know. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, but an important element of it is because like the way that we're trying to introduce it is for it to be a bit more of an organic, individualized system where, yes, there are rules, but it's sort of also dependent on the person. It's both as precise and abstract as our real world. At least that's what we're going for. I hope we're coming close to accomplishing that. I'm not sure we nail it every time, but the idea being that like it's as unique as an individual, which is as unique as a snowflake. It's which is both very complicated and very easy to write.
I would also add too that there's like an element of that we didn't necessarily know we needed a system right away, but once we had an editor involved and there was a larger conversation around the story, there was questions that were being asked in those stages too, where we were like, well, we should probably figure out, some of the why without giving too much away, so that we can still figure some stuff out if we need to later. And so even though it was like we want to have magic, we also felt like, okay, what are the rules of magic? Oh, we didn't even really know we needed rules. Okay, yeah, that makes sense though. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then I guess to jump all around a little bit, you said you sketched out the twins was pretty much the first intro to this. Did that then have a major influence on choosing the time setting? Did they?
I think yes. Yeah, I think so. I think I was like thinking of, I think mostly just like maybe the fashion sense of the time, but not even because the twins themselves are kind of anachronistic. Like they kind of have more of a 50s greaser vibe, which I honestly was like, that's something that happened really early and then became sort of a way to identify them iconically. But like, I don't even know if I could explain like where they get it from, like why they make those decisions as characters. It just sort of like, because that was so baked in from the very, very beginning, it just kind of stayed with every iteration of the characters. But I do think that like once we started talking about it and being in like the 60s or like that time period, we had a lot of fun, just like thinking about what we could do with that time period.
Yeah, and Nathan, I consider all the writing to be fantastic, so don't take this the wrong way. But I do think sometimes there's a bit of maybe a purity is a good word. When you set things in the past and you've got this, oh no, we need to let them know, we need to warn them. And there's actually tension in how do we get to them. Whereas, in the modern setting, it's, well, we'll call them, text them. Like, what's your problem? Of course we can get in touch. And this idea of, we have to travel there. We have to hunt down this clue. We have to hunt down this person. There's sort of some story beats that I think the time period allows that probably make it a little easier as a writer. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think it could be set in modern time and have magic. Like, I know that there's IP that pulls that off really well, but like for me, it's so much richer and interesting to write with the time period that we're in, because you don't have those fallbacks. Like I don't get to phone it in at any point, and I love that challenge, and I love having to do that research, because everything I read up on the 60s, it brings me that much closer to the characters as well. So it's certainly a challenge, but it's definitely a welcomed one.
So my biggest question that came out of reading The Devil's Music, Witch's Hand, I felt like we dropped in, we knew the boys had had some adventures before, but we dropped into a story and we got to the end of the story, and there was, I liked the characters. I was happy to hear I was going to get to meet them again. But I feel like in The Devil's Music, you didn't leave us with a happy tied up bow. Is there a current sense of how many volumes might be coming out? Because there's obviously needs to be more story told at this point.
In terms of like how many, what I will say is that we have a lot more story to tell. And for that to happen, it's just it's a matter of, it's tricky. How many volumes I can't say, but I like saying that we have a lot more story to tell, and that one way or another we're gonna get it out. It's gonna come to you. I can't wait to show everyone what we have in store.
I'm sure I don't get a vote, but I'm going to say minimum 5.
Okay. All right.
Good number.
Making a note of that here.
I feel like, because, I feel like when often the first book
hears that.
That's a valid point. Make sure that gets through. I feel like often when you read a first volume, it does have a little bit of that tidiness. I often use the example the original Star Wars. Okay, yeah, we never met the Emperor and Vader, his ship. There's stuff out there. It's not done, but it felt clean. And then you finish Empire, and you're like, we need more. You can't do this. And so I when I finished Devil's Music, quite honestly, I kind of ran through that in my head. I went, okay, is this a trilogy? Do we have one more? Can we wrap this up? Can we? And my answer was no. So that's why I say minimum 5. I feel like I want to know more and more, and we got to get deeper and deeper. Do you know? Now, see, I don't know how much we want to get into spoilers, or if everyone's read it already.
How leading are these questions?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just honestly curious. We finish with cliffhanger isn't even right. We have someone has told a lie at the end of the book.
Mm-hmm.
We know someone has told a lie. Do you guys know who it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair enough. I can leave that there. The other question I thought of right away when I was invited to participate this evening was actually about color. There's this wonderful carry through, I guess, from the covers of the books into the content, and the purple. I don't know if we've got Montague Twin things. I've got mine here. So this purple that we've added to the cover, there was a lot of just black and red, becomes a little bit of a theme, right? We're getting a lot of purple imagery within the story as well.
Mm-hmm.
Was that meant? Like, was that a convenience? Was that just mood? Did you want the colors to represent particular aspects of the magic and the mood?
I'm not sure if I thought of them representing a particular, I don't know if I chose purple as like a theme. Literally, I'm like in a purple room right now. Like, I wonder what inspired me. I think more of wanting to have a consistent feel throughout the sort of like the mood and the atmosphere. And actually, it's funny though. Actually, I do all the shading in the book with one particular shade of purple. Just when I'm going through finishing all the coloring and putting in all the shadows and stuff, I use this really muted sort of mauvey purple because I feel like purple shadows sort of like bring out somehow they bring out a lot of like the colors that are existing there. And then what I usually do is I go in and I throw in basically a wash over the whole scene that like evens out all the lighting, and so that everything looks really consistent through a scene, because I want it to feel like you know where you are in a portion of the book for that portion. We move around a lot, so there's different characters and they're not always in the same place. And I find that like if you're reading a comic and there's a sort of sudden jump to a different scene, there can be a tendency to just like, it doesn't take long. The reader is very good at being like, oh, okay, I just needed to catch up to where I am. But I think if color distinguishes where we are throughout a scene, we could say, okay, this color is going to sort of be consistent, or this sort of lighting. I like to say lighting instead of color because it is more of like trying to create a consistent lighting through the scene. Then you can kind of ground yourself in that scene, and then when that changes or you go to a different scene and there's different lighting for that scene, there's a clear sort of distinction of like the reader is quick to acknowledge that like we've just cut over to these characters and now I understand that we're back with these characters again. Purple, I think specifically just kind of came through naturally. I guess maybe I'm naturally drawn to it because a lot of the time I'm just kind of clicking through colors. Like at the very end, the last thing I do is put that sort of wash over everything and make sure it's all consistent. And I think I'm just clicking through being like, what appeals to me specifically. So I think a lot of that just probably comes from being like, this looks good. I think this is what it needs to look like. I also think traditionally in the sort of magic-y stuff, there's like a lot of greens and there's a lot of reds and like kind of blue teal kind of magic pink too. And I thought purple might be a nice little different just a different kind of like a different color to distinguish that for us.
Yeah. Well, if you'll excuse me, just raving about you, about the art for a bit. One of the things that I often point out, as John said, I've been a fan of graphic novels for a long time, and you will see sometimes in original stories, often when they're adapting some other work into graphic, you end up with this, for lack of a better term, lazy. They just adapted it. They didn't translate it. They didn't think about how to tell it in the medium, and they aren't using all the storytelling beats. And so you talk about the color with the setting, and I think that's very clear. But it also, well, lighting is the right word. Does mood the way in a movie. I will not be worried about the characters when the background music is just this light little going along, fill in the space thing. When you've got, they're finding important clues, but when they're on that sunlit street and there's none of those shadows creeping in, and there's no, like, I know they're fine. And then suddenly it's a new environment, it's a new place. And even though there's not an obvious danger, there is, because the mood has changed. There's that violin, equivalent in the lighting scheme. And I think you guys just do a masterful job of using the medium to tell the story, using everything available to you, whether it's, large page spreads, panel breaks, shadow color. It's really enjoyable to be able to have that full mood portrayed. So it's less of a question and more of a job well done, I guess.
I love it. I love the colors, and I love when people bring up the colors, especially in front of Drew, because he was so nervous about doing the coloring, like literally grabbing me by the collar and being like, I cannot do the colors. And I was like, well, yeah, so good luck. And then I just love, if I can rave about our own book for a second.
Please do.
I love how differently it feels. You pick it up and it, like, immediately those colors are just unlike anything else I'm reading right now or have read in a while, and that's all Drew. And I'm so proud of him and so happy that people point that out, because that, like, so I don't want to say insecure, but you were nervous about that.
Yeah. I think it's just because I know that it is a point. I'm terrified of color. If you look at my editorial work, I use as little of it as I'll use like 3 colors, and it's like, that's a whole illustration. It's just gonna be 3 colors, because I can't try to fixate on getting the right colors down. So I just when it comes to that, I get really not necessarily nervous, because I know it needs to work. It needs to be right, and I'm not a perfectionist. If you look at the work in the art, it's not like perfect by any means. Like, I'm very much like happy to cut corners as long as it communicates. As long as something communicates, I'm always, that's, what, I'll say that in the end. Color has to communicate. Everything has to communicate. If it communicates, then I'm happy with it in the end. But that's what I'm thinking about. I'm trying to make sure that, like, this, so Joseph, I appreciate you saying that, because when I'm trying to, like, shift the mood or something, I'm trying to communicate a new thing is about to happen. But when you don't have, the, like, music at your disposal or something like that, like, the way you can do it is color, visually, hierarchies of stupid technical stuff.
You can do it. You can do it. I can't do it.
I can do it. I'm telling anybody else out there who's trying to, like, if you want to make a comic, these are some of the things you could do.
So I'm going to assume that many people who end up watching this video don't know you folks personally. Drew, you talk about finding Nathan. Nathan, you talk about him grabbing you by the collar. What connected you guys? How are you? Did you originally find each other? Or?
Well, I was working at a fancy food store in Toronto with really overpriced cheese that, like, Canadian celebrities would come by every now and then, and it would just make everyone's day. I had been there a few months, and then Drew came in looking for a job. And right after his interview, on his way out, I was sort of hanging behind the counter, and I was like, "Hey, what kind of music you like?"
He's like, "If I'm gonna work with you, I need to know what kind of music you like."
Because I was sort of like the music guy. I was the music guy at the store. It was always my iPod on.
God, do you hear yourself right now?
I was terrible. I was not a good person. But we ended up bonding over music is the short answer. And I think within the week of Drew starting at the store, I mentioned that I was going to see a show, Cass McCombs, and with this band Lower Den's opening. And Drew was like, "Well, I want to come." And that was it. We went to the show, we hung out, and then this is something that really solidified our friendship for me, is that I think a week later, it was my birthday. And I really didn't have much planned. And was it the last or the second to last Harry Potter movie had just come out?
Oh God.
Doesn't matter. But Drew was like, I'm taking you to a movie. And that's what we went and saw. And then we just started talking Montague Twins pretty much.
Yeah, I think I came. Well, we talked about, like, you were like talking about writing, and you had written some stuff in high school. Like, you wrote some plays that were put on, and I was like, I can't write a script for a comic book that I'm trying to do. So you want to maybe give that a shot? And then we just talked about what it could be, and it's almost 10 years old, this comic now, if not 10 years old this year or something. You know, like, we've been talking Montague Twins since like 2011 or 12.
It's been a spell. It's been a spell. We love our boys.
Mm-hmm. Our babies.
Well, maybe that's a good intro to talk a little bit more about the writing. I would say that from my perspective, which is not, authoritative, a lot of that mood and tone and stuff is very much the art. I do feel like these books, a lot of the character comes across. They're sort of, it's not idiosyncratic exactly. It's not like everyone's got catchphrases, but the characters really do each have their own voice. Maybe that's the best way of putting it. Is that something that you tried to find originally? Was it all plotted out first?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the individual voice was hugely important, especially when you're writing about twins. Like, you want them to be twins, but you also want them to be individuals as well, because otherwise it's just not true. So yeah, it was absolutely planned. I'm not saying it came second nature, or it didn't take work, or isn't something that I'm still working toward, but I'm very proud to hear you say that they do all sound different, because that is a very important aspect. And that's something I do in the writing with the Montague Twins, is that there's no captions whatsoever. Like, every development, everything comes through in dialogue. And so that's hugely important. And yeah, I'm really, really happy to hear you say that. So thank you.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's fair to say that the twins actually do look very similar. So giving them a different voice does help distinguish them.
Absolutely.
Probably so it's a sort of compliment to both of you. I was trying to find the passage here because I was actually thinking about our young ladies. There's a point where Rachel's just laying in. I'm not going to find it quickly. But I was just thinking, like, it's so her. I've known these characters for not that long, and it was not. There are lots of reasons many of the characters might be giving a lecture, but it was a Rachel lecture.
And Rachel specifically, because she's only been around. I mean, she was the antagonist in book 1, basically.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. And so it's since her sort of inclusion in this book as more of one of the gang. It's really cool to hear you say that, because
Yeah, no, and I think that's like why it really struck me is I was like, yeah, this is so her. And I'm like, why do I know, why do I know her so well already? But it really worked.
Nathan is really good at. It's my turn to compliment you. Ha! Take it. It's is really good at giving the characters like. It seems so obvious. It's like giving the characters motivation, but it's like the way that I think Nathan conceptualizes the characters on his own time outside of the written passages of dialogue or whatever is I think what makes its way into those characters, because it's all so, like you were saying, Joseph, it's so rich. Like, like exactly who that person is, right? Like just from a few lines of dialogue and what they're saying or how they're reacting to something, and it's like that's Nathan's magical superpower, because the scripts that I get from him don't have a lot for me to draw necessarily. He's not telling me what to do. He's just saying like, here's where we are and here's people talking. And I love it because it gives me a lot of fun, but I also get to just read the Montague Twins before anybody else. And it's always such a pleasure because I get to spend time with those characters before anybody, and then I get to imagine where they are and like what it looks like where they're standing. I guess.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just doing a quick count here.
Yeah.
So you say he doesn't give you much direction in the script. I believe I just counted this book opening with 28 panels with 0 dialogue.
Fair point. That's a fair point.
So
all right, fine. Okay, I'll go. We don't have to... No, that's...
May have been a bit of instruction at some point.
I'm going to pull up the script. Where is it? Oh no, I lost focus. I didn't know this camera had focus. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's Nathan. Can you?
Well, I mean, I think when you say I don't give you much to do, it's more I give you the direction in the sense of like.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that like that.
That's okay. I get what you're saying, but like, because I do leave a lot up to interpretation. There are a lot of panels where I'm just like, this is the vibe, dude. Like, this is the vibe. Please draw this, and that's a testament to our synchronicity. Is that like whenever I feel like I've written something that can't be drawn because all I can articulate is a mood, Drew is able to do that. And they're moody books. They're rather moody books, and that is something I can convey is the mood. And whenever I worry that it's not on the page, Drew's got it. There's very little discussion about what it needs to be. So in terms of like not always laying it all out, I think that just comes down to trust. And yeah. Also, I like your point about the opening with 0 dialogue whatsoever. And I think a couple other parts in the book as well, because sometimes I just like throwing it out there and being like, let's see what you got. What are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do with this?
Yeah, it's true. And it's always fun to do that because I feel like you're doing that in a way that says, go have fun, like play with this. Like you're giving me a permission to play with something. And I think that that's always like extremely rewarding experience. Well, I also think we had the cold open of book 2 was a extremely well thought out. That was not like Nathan and I had a very long conversation about how that needed to play out too. So because it needed to work on so many different levels, and it also needed to not sensationalize what was going on in that opening scene. And we needed to make sure we got that specifically that one right. So that one's if anything overwritten in a way because we had to make sure we were nailing it.
That's interesting because it's a real classic prologue. And one of the arguments I often make in favor of graphic novels, there are still folks out there who treat it as sort of, reading, but not really. And one of the struggles that, I work with, sell books to kids, talk to kids, talk to their parents, talk to their teachers. And children who are struggling struggle with story comprehension. You can read words, and you guys brought it up first, but the first Harry Potter book is supposed to be, for a struggling kid, you go, oh, this is an exciting story, wizard, whatever. It's not when they open it. It's a cat. I don't know if you remember this. It's a cat sitting on a street corner who turns into a lady, has a really obtuse conversation with a man about how somebody died and that's sad, but somebody else died and that's kind of good. And then a third guy shows up. Then a third guy shows up with a baby, and
on
then
a motorcycle.
And then and then a flying motorcycle, of course. And then we stop that story, and then a kid's getting bullied by his cousin. And for a kid who is struggling reading, that's not helpful. And one of the things graphics can do in a much more digestible way is give us some of that. So this is the same concept of the classic prologue you've given us. We don't know what this is, but there's the promise that the story is gonna tie into it once we get back to our regular characters and back to, figuring it out. And those elements can take a child and help them comprehend the whole idea of any story they're encountering in any medium. So I think
you just told me on comics and graphic novels again. Like that's absolutely true. That's a beautiful way of seeing it.
I know I'm circling back and forth here a little bit, but I was going to say, Drew, you were talking about Nathan knowing the characters better than we even get to see, and I think that is a trick for authors and creators. As a reader, I want to know that you know more about the characters than I do, and I feel like. Trying to think of an example. Ethan, you don't have to actually answer this, but I would guess that you could tell me what kind of a swimsuit Chuck wears. Right? There's no need to put that information. We don't need to see that. We don't need to have a special swim scene because you thought that up. But there is this sort of sense, that they all have full things. They all have full histories. You know how everyone likes their coffee. You can hear some of that music. We can't. It's visually really cool. I feel like I experience it in one way, but we obviously can't hear the tunes. But I feel like you know what everybody likes, and that really comes across very well. I think that probably helps in the writing, I'm guessing. Is that fair to say that's what Drew was talking about? You sitting with the characters and knowing them?
Absolutely. The space in my brain that they occupy is incredible. Like it's just, it never stops. That Drew will get texts at just random hours that are just, it's like we're fighting so long, and it's just about world stuff because I love it. I truly love it, and I love every character. And I do know how they like their coffee, and I know their signs. I know and love everything about them. And it's what I wanted to feel like is like in the first book, we sort of plop you in, there's a story ongoing, and then that comes to a conclusion. And in the second book, it's kind of the same vibe. Like it's like, okay, so we're just joining these kids. And what I wanted to feel like is just sort of a song that, sort of fades in, and then it just blows you away and then fades out, but then you're always sort of waiting for it to come back. I want it to feel like there's something going on in between at all times. So you, as a reader, you can also start to fill that in, or at least crave that, like want to know, because those are the things that I really love about, books, movies. I love thinking about the in-between times, the things we don't get to see. And that fascinates me, if that's I love the connective tissue, and I love the idea of being able to show that as
There's
well,
also
while also holding back. Very true.
There's also something about, because we only have so much literal page space to tell the story in, and we know there's so much beyond those pages that we can physically fill. I think we're just also trying to hint at more, because we would love to put everything that we're talking about into the book itself, but that would be incredibly difficult for both of us.
You'd be mad at me.
I'd be
so
very
mad.
mad.
At me.
Yeah. 300 and something pages of whatever. But I think that it comes in because of that too, because we're literally physically limited to a space, and we want to immerse ourselves and the audience in the world of the twins and the world of the gang, that we're just that's I think that's where maybe some of that comes from, and I'm just thinking of that right now, actually, based off of what you said, Nathan.
No, and it's a good sign, I think, and Nathan, you're saying it goes across mediums too, but I do feel like these characters, I can imagine them having a boring day. There isn't a particular disaster or evil or problem. You get the sense just in some of the hints at parenting style, and the one scene with the broken wall and you guys head out, we're talking. There's a real sense that maybe this isn't the first lecture of that kind that has ever happened in this house, right? I think all my favorite books, movies, television shows, you get that sense of I could have followed that person off the screen over there, or that that those guys getting there on that road trip, we could have hung out with them the whole time. Something would have happened. Somebody's doing something there, and that comes across really well. I think that's part of that sense of the characters are lived in, the world's lived in. Even the reaction, we got a little bit of just I'm afraid I don't remember the lady's name, but our Gideon's temporary landlady.
Mrs. Normandy.
Mrs. Normandy.
Mrs.
Normandy. Hi, Mrs. Normandy.
Yeah, she's been in the town. They've all seen her before, right? I knew that right away. She's not a plot device just for this particular little story. It's not, with all due respect, it's not, watching Buffy and they're like, they have a zoo? When did they get a zoo? Oh, just for this episode. Oh, okay. It really feels like they're of course they've seen her before. Of course she has opinions on those rowdy kids. Of course, and I love the lived in. I love the fuller than I can see aspect of it. So another way you guys did a great job.
That's really great to hear. I love that you said I can imagine them having a boring day. In a way, nothing excites me more than somebody able to take my characters and just place them in another day. I don't know why that is, but I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is just about all the comments and questions I had in my brain to go with. You guys have anything you wanted to make a point of telling the world before we wrap up here?
I'd just like to say thanks for being a fan of it. I the whole time we're talking, I'm just this is our first, basically our first graphic novel. The Witch's Hand was the first thing we did. You're giving us so much credit for stuff that we are still novices at, and I think about how much there still is for us to learn, even, and for us to every book is a little bit of a learning experience, and each time we do it we're learning more and more. But it is nice to just feel I just wanted to say thanks, because we a lot of the times we're looking at this do we even know? We don't know what we're doing. Maybe this is something, I hope. And even just the fact that we're even here talking to you folks, and that McNally Robinson are such big supporters of us is really mind-blowing for us, because this is just something fun we thought about in Nathan's backyard 10 years ago. Seriously, we just feel really blessed, and we're really grateful.
Well, being a fan is not hard work. It just kind of happened. So
Yeah, and just want to say, for anyone currently watching in the future, or will never come across this, realize that things are a little scary right now in a lot of different ways. But we appreciate you and love you. I don't know what else to say.
Sounds like a perfect way to wrap it up. I really appreciate having a chance to talk to you guys. I know that some of my staff and coworkers will just be flat out jealous that I got this opportunity. We are really, truly big fans of the series, and by extension, you guys. So keep them coming. Minimum 5.
That's sweet.
Feel free to go farther, but minimum 5.
That's the new mandate.
Tell your publisher. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I will just let John close us out formally here, I guess.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Joseph.
much.
No, thank you kindly all. That was a fantastic conversation. And I'll just remind everybody that the Montague Twins, The Witch's Hand, and of course, the latest, The Devil's Music, are available for purchase at McNally Robinson. We are open to the public. We are available over the phone, online as well. We deliver nationally and internationally, and we also deliver door to door here in Winnipeg. So wherever you are, we will find a way to get one of these incredible books into your hands. I'd like to just keep the gratitude rolling for one more minute, just to thank everybody who joined us here this evening, everyone who's watching this video in the future. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. Huge thanks to Nathan Page and Drew Shannon for taking the time as well. We're such big fans of these books and looking forward to at least 5 volumes in this series. And thank you as well, of course, to Josef for helping to come in and host this so incredibly well. We're grateful to Penguin Random House Canada for helping to make this happen, and hope that you'll all join us again in the future and check out these books and all the books to come. So with that, I will close and remind you that this video will remain live, so please share it with anyone who did not get a chance to see it the first time around. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.